Hello, my name is Jeremy Griffith, and I'll be your narrator for this tour of the Hawaiian volcanic islands. We named the project Pele's Playground. Our project members consist of Linda Rivera, Robert Percival, and Vanessa Campos. Our first stop is going to be Kilauea, Hawaii. Topographically, Kilauea appears as only a bulge on the southeastern flank of Mauna Loa, and so for many years Kilauea was thought to be a mere satellite of its giant neighbor, not a separate volcano. However, research over the past few decades shows clearly that Kilauea has its own magma plumbing system, extending to the surface for more than 60 kilometers deep in the earth. In fact, the summit of Kilauea lies on a curving line of volcanoes that include Mauna Kea, Kohala, and excludes Mauna Loa. In other words, Kilauea is to Mauna Kea as Aloiha is to Mauna Loa. Hawaiians use the word Kilauea only for the summit caldera, but earth scientists and, over time, popular usage have extended the name to include the entire volcano. And this kind of gives you an idea of where we got our project title from. Kilauea is home of Pele, the Hawaiian volcanic goddess. Hawaiian chants and oral traditions tell in veiled forms of many eruptions fermented from an angry Pele before the first European, the missionary Reverend William Ellis, saw the summit in 1823. The caldera was a site of nearly continuous volcanic activity during the 19th century and in the early part of the 20th century. Kilauea ranks among the world's most active volcanoes and may even top the list. Since 1952, Kilauea has erupted 34 times. From 1983 to 2018, eruptive activity was nearly continuous along the volcano's east rift zone. At the summit, event with Hailamaumau hosted an active lava pond and vigorous gas plume from 2008 to 2018. In 2018, the decades-long continuous activity on the east rift zone ended, and the summit lava lake drained following an intrusion into and an eruption from Kilauea's lower east rift zone. That was Kilauea's largest eruption in the last 200 years and was accompanied by the largest summit collapse from the same time period. Kilauea's eruptive history has been a long and active one. Its name means spewing or much spreading in the Hawaiian language, referring to its frequent outpouring of lava. The earliest lava from the volcano date back into its submarine pre-shield stage. Samples having been recovered by remote-operated underwater vehicles from its submerged slopes, samples of other flows have been recovered as core samples. Lavas younger than 1,000 years cover 90% of the volcano's surface. The oldest exposed lava dates back to 2,800 years. The first well-documented eruption of Kilauea occurred in 1823. Since then, the volcano has erupted repeatedly. Most historical eruptions occurred at the volcano's summit or its eastern rift zone and were prolonged and effusive in nature. The geological record shows, however, that violent explosive activity predated European contact was extremely common. In 1790s, one such eruption killed more than 400 people, making it the deadliest volcanic eruption in what is now the United States. Should explosive activity start anew, the volcano would become a much more danger to humans. Kilauea's most recent eruption began January 3, 1983, and ended in 2018. This was by far its longest duration historical period of activity, as well as one of the longest duration eruptions in the world. As of January 2011, the eruption had produced 3.5 cubic kilometers of lava and resurfaced 123.2 kilometers of land, or 48 square miles. Beginning in March of 2018, the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory began detecting rapid inflation at Pu'u'o'o, leading scientists to warn that the increased pressure could lead to the formation of a new vent in Kilauea. Following weeks of increased pressure, the crater floor of the cone of Pu'u'o'o collapsed at April 30th, 2018. As magma migrated underground into the lower Puna region of Kilauea's lower east rift zone, over the next few days, hundreds of small earthquakes were detected at Kilauea's east rift zone. leading officials to issue evacuation orders. On May 3, 2018, new fissures formed and lava began erupting in Lower Puna after a 5.0 earthquake earlier in the day, causing evacuations from Lilani Estates and Lanipuna Gardens subdivisions. A seemingly related 6.9 magnitude earthquake occurred on May 4th, and by May 9th, 27 houses had been destroyed in Leilani Estates. By May 21st, 2 lava flows had reached the Pacific Ocean, creating thick clouds of laze, which is a toxic lava, and a haze cloud, which is made up of hydrochloric acid and glass particles. In May of 31st, 87 houses in Leilani Estates and nearby areas had been destroyed by lava, and advancing lava flows caused additional evacuation orders, including the town of Kapoihoi. By June 4th, with the lava having crossed through Kapoihoi and entered the ocean, the confirmed number of houses lost had reached 159. 2 weeks later, a confirmed number of homes lost was 533, and as of June 25th, it had risen to 657. In 2018, the United States Geological Survey National Volcanic Threat Assessment gave Kilauea an overall threat score of 263 and ranked it first among volcanoes in the United States most likely to threaten lives and infrastructure. In June 2019, reading from the USGS, United States Geological Survey instruments, indicated that Kilauea's shallow summit magma chamber was slowly refilling with magma. The presence of new water lake in Halamau remains Kilauea's next summit eruption could be explosive if magma rises rapidly to the surface. However, this is uncertain as there are plenty of underground water present at Kilauea's summit, and yet the volcano did not experience any explosive eruptions over the past century. Our next stop is Mauna Lua. The largest subaerial volcano in both mass and volume, Mauna Lua has historically been considered the largest volcano on Earth, dwarfed only by Tamu Massif. It is an active shield volcano with relatively gentle slopes, with a volume estimated at approximately 18,000 cubic miles, although its peak is about 125 feet lower than that of its neighbor, Mauna Kea. Its long submarine flanks descend to the seafloor an additional 5 kilometers, and the seafloor in turn is depressed by Mauna Lua's great mass another 8 kilometers. This makes the volcano's summit about 17 kilometers above its base. The enormous volcano covers half the island of Hawaii and by itself amounts to about 85% of the area of all other Hawaiian islands combined. Mauna Lua has probably been erupting for at least 700,000 years and may have emerged above sea level about 400,000 years ago. The oldest known dated rocks are not older than 200,000 years. Mauna Lua's most recent eruption occurred March 24th to April 15th, 1984. No recent eruptions of the volcano have caused fatalities, but eruptions in 1926 and 1950 destroyed villages. And the city of Hilo is partly built on the lava flows from the late 19th century. Because of the potential hazard it poses to population centers, Mauna Lua is part of the Decades Volcano program, which encourages studies of the world's most dangerous volcanoes. Mauna Lua has been monitored intensively by the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory since 1912. Observations of the atmosphere are undertaken at the Mauna Lua Observatory, and of the sun at the Mauna Lua Solar Observatory, both located near the mountain summit. The Hawaiian name Mauna Lua means long mountain. This name is apt for the subaerial part of Mauna Lua extends for about 120 kilometers from the southern tip of the island to the summit caldera, and then east-northeast to the coastline near Hilo. Although volcanic eruptions in Hawaii rarely produce casualties, property damage due to inundation by lava is a common and costly hazard. Hawaiian-type eruptions usually produce extremely slow-moving flows that advance at a walking pace, presenting little danger to human life. But this is not strictly the case. Mauna Lua's 1950 eruption emitted as much lava in 3 weeks as Kilauea's recent eruption produced in 3 years, and reached sea level within 4 hours of its start, overrunning the village of Hoiukina, Maki, and Hilo. Partly built on lavas from the Hilo, which was partly built on the lavas from 1880 to 81 eruption. They are all at a risk for future eruptions. The 1984 eruption nearly reached the city, but stopped short after the flow was redirected upstream. Next, we'll be moving to Ho'ea-la-Le'a. It is considered to be in the post-shield stage of activity. 6 different vents erupted lava between the late 1700s and 1801, 2 of which generated lava flows that poured into the sea on the west coast of the island. The Keyhole Airport, located only 11 kilometers or 7 miles north of Kilauea-Kona, is built atop the larger flow. The oldest dated rocks from about 128,000 years ago, and it probably reached an elevation above sea level before 300,000 years ago. The volume of Ho'ea-la-Le'a is 12,400 cubic kilometers, and its area is 751 kilometers. Though Ho'ea-la-Le'a is not nearly as active as Mauna Loa or Kilauea, geological mapping of the volcano shows that 80% of Ho'ea-la-Le'a's surface has been covered by lava flows in the past 5,000 years. In the past few decades, when most of the resorts, homes, and commercial buildings were built on the flanks of Ho'ea-la-Le'a, earthquake activity beneath the volcano has been low. In 1929, however, an intense swarm of more than 6,200 earthquakes rattled the area around the volcano for more than a month. The earthquakes were most likely caused by an intrusion of magma beneath the volcano. 2 large earthquakes, each with about a magnitude of 6.5, destroyed houses, water tanks, stone fences, and roadways. For these reasons, Ho'ea-la-Le'a is considered a potentially dangerous volcano that is likely to erupt again. Ho'ea-la-Le'a is the 3rd most active volcano making up the island of Hawaii, behind Kilauea and Mauna Loa. Although the 2 larger volcanoes have each erupted over 150 times in the past 1,000 years, Ho'ea-la-Le'a has done it so but 3 times. The recurrence of activity at the volcano seems to be every 200 to 300 years. A recent calm period with almost no earthquake or magmatic activity at the volcano has seen the growth of homes, businesses, and resorts on the mountain flanks. The most recent major activity at the volcano was 1929, when an intense earthquake swarmed rocked the volcano, most likely caused by the magmatic action near the volcano's peak. Although it has been relatively placid in the recent past, the volcano is still potentially active and is expected to erupt again within the next 100 years. Ho'ea-la-Le'a is expected to erupt again in the near future as a 200 to 300 year estimated pause in activity is coming to an end. This presents a distinct hazard to the communities around it as well. For example, in the event of an eruption similar to the 1801 event, Kilauea-Kona, which is 15 miles from the volcano summit, could be covered completely in a matter of hours. According to the USGS lava flow hazard zones on a scale of 1 to 9, all of Ho'ea-la-Le'a is listed as a threat level 4. For comparison, almost all of Kilauea and Mauna Loa is listed as threat levels 1 through 3. The flanks of the volcano do not pose a lower threat to the population than the area near the rift zones because the distance is short and the slopes are steep. Lava poses as much of a threat as it does near its source. Next, we'll be traveling to Mauna Kea. Mauna Kea is a dormant volcano on the island of Hawaii. Its peak of 4,207.3 meters above sea level, making it the highest point in the state of Hawaii. Most of the volcano is underwater, and when measured from its underwater base, Mauna Kea is the tallest mountain in the world, measuring 10,211 meters, or 33,500 feet in height. Mauna Kea is about 1 million years old, and thus has passed the most active shield stage of life hundreds of thousands of years ago. In its current post-shield state, its lava is more viscous, resulting in a steeper profile. Late volcanism has given it a much rougher appearance than its neighboring volcanoes due to construction of cinder cones, decentralization of its rift zones, glaciation on its peaks, and weathering by prevailing trade winds. Mauna Kea last erupted 6,000 to 4,000 years ago and is now considered dormant. The peak is about 38 meters higher than Mauna Loa, its massive neighbor. Mauna Kea, like Hawaii's other older volcanoes, Hualalai and Kohala, has evolved beyond the shield building stage, as indicated by the low eruption rates compared to Mauna Loa and Kilauea. The absence of a summit caldera and the elongated fissure vents that radiated its summits, steeper and more irregular topography, and different chemical compositions of lava. These changes in part reflect a low-rate magma supply that causes the continuously active summit reservoir and rift zones of the shield stage to give way to smaller, isolated batches of magma that rise episodically into the volcano, erupt briefly, and soon solidify. They also reflect greater viscosity and volatile content of the lava, which results in thick flows that steepen the edifices and explosive eruptions that build large cinder cones. In Hawaiian religion, the peaks of the island of Hawaii are sacred. An ancient law allowed only high-ranking alai to visit its peak. Alali are Hawaiian nobility. The Hawaiian name Mauna Kea means white mountain, but is also known in native traditions and prayers as Mauna Wakai, or the mountain of Wakai. Mauna Wakai is the first mountain son of Wakai and Papa, the progenitors of the Hawaiian race. With its high elevation, dry environment, and stable airflow, Mauna Kea summit is one of the best sites in the world for astronomical observation. Since the creation of the access road in 1964, 13 telescopes funded by 11 countries have been constructed at the summit. The Mauna Kea observatories are used for scientific research across the electromagnetic spectrum and comprise the largest such facility in the world. Their constructions on a landscape considered sacred by native Hawaiians continues to be a topic of debate to this day. Next, we'll be going over the ocean and looking at a seamount or underwater volcano named Loaihi. It is on the flank of the Mauna Loa, the Earth's largest shield volcano. It is the newest volcano created by the Hawaiian hotspot in the extensive Hawaiian Emperor seamount chain. The distance between the summit of the older Mauna Loa and the summit of Loaihi is about 80 kilometers or 50 miles, which is, coincidentally, also the approximate diameter of the Hawaiian hotspot. Loaihi consists of a summit area with three pit craters, an 11-kilometer-long rift zone extending north from the summit, and 19-kilometer-long rift zone extending south-southeast from the summit. The summit's pit craters are named West Pit, East Pit, and Pele's Pit. Until 1970, Loaihi was thought to be an inactive volcano that had been transported in its current location by seafloor spreading. The seafloor under Hawaii is 80 to 100 million years old and was created at the East Pacific Rise, an oceanic spreading center, where new seafloor forms from magma that erupts from the mantle. New oceanic crust moves away from the spreading center. Over a period of 80 to 100 million years, the seafloor under Hawaii moved from the East Pacific Rise to its present location, 6,000 kilometers west, carrying ancient seamounts with it. When scientists investigated a series of earthquakes off of Hawaii in 1970, they discovered Loaihi was an active member of the Hawaiian Emperor seamount chain. Loaihi is following the pattern of development that is characteristic of all Hawaiian volcanoes. Geochemical evidence from Loaihi lavas indicates that Loaihi is in transition between the pre-shield and shield volcano stage, providing valuable clues to the early development of Hawaiian volcanoes. In the pre-shield stage, Hawaiian volcanoes have steeper sides and a lower level of activity, producing an alkali basalt lava. Continued volcanism is expected to eventually create an island off of Loaihi. Loaihi experiences frequent landslides. The growth of the volcano has destabilized its slopes, and extensive areas of debris inhabit the steep southeastern face. Similar deposits from other volcanoes indicate the landslide debris is an important product of the early development of Hawaiian volcanoes. Loaihi is predicted to rise above the surface in 10,000 to 100,000 years. Loaihi is a young and fairly active volcano, although less active than nearby Kilauea, In the past few decades, several earthquake swarms have been attributed to Lo'ai, the largest of which are summarized in the table below. The volcano's activity is now known to predate scientific record keeping of its activity, which commenced in 1959. Most earthquake swarms at Lo'ai have lasted less than 2 days. The two exceptions are the 1990-91 earthquake, lasting several months, and the 1996 event, which was shorter but much more pronounced. The 1996 event was directly observed by an ocean bottom seismometer, allowed scientists to calculate the depth of the earthquakes at 6 kilometers to 8 kilometers below the summit, approximating to the position of Lo'ai's extremely shallow magma chamber. This is the evidence that Lo'ai's seismicity is volcanic in origin. The last trip we're going to make is to Haleakala. The most recent eruptions occurred sometimes between the years 1480 and 1600. East Maui's long eruptive history and recent activity indicated that the volcano will erupt in the future. East Maui's volume is about 30,000 cubic kilometers, with about 90% of the volume below sea level. Its area is 1,470 kilometers, with 570 miles. The volcano is considered to be in the post-shield stage. Hawaii, named Haleakala, literally means the house of sun, is now nearly synonymous with the entire shield of the East Maui volcano. Early Hawaiians, however, applied the name only to the summit area, the site where the demigod Maui snared the sun and forced it to slow its journey across the sky. A large topographic depression, Haleakala's crater, occupies the summit region. The crater is an erosional feature and opens at its northwest and southwest corners, forming large valleys that drain to the north and south coast respectively. The oldest lava flow exposed on East Maui was 1.1 million years in age. It is part of a sequence of flows and placed near the end of the shield building of East Maui. The volcano began its growth about 2 million years ago. Until recently, East Maui volcano was thought to have last erupted at 1790, based largely on the comparison of maps made during the voyages of the La Perouse and the George Vancouver. Recent advanced dating tests, however, have shown the last eruption was more likely to have been in the 17th century. These last flows from the southwest zone of Haleakala make up the large lava deposits of the Anakina Perouse Bay area of South Maui. Contrary to popular belief, Haleakala crater is not volcanic in origin, nor can it be accurately called a caldera, which is formed when the summit of a volcano collapses to form a depression. Scientists believe Haleakala's crater was formed when the headwalls of two large erosional valleys merged at the summit of the volcano. These valleys formed the two large gaps, Ko'ola on the north side and Kapo on the south, on either side of the depression. On the island of Hawaii, lava flow hazards are rated on a scale of 1 through 9, with 1 being the zone of the highest hazard and 9 being the zone of the lowest hazard. For example, the summits and rift zones of Kilauea and Mauna Loa are rated at a hazard zone 1. Using the same scale, preliminary estimates of lava flow hazards on Maui made in 1983 by the U.S. Geological Survey rated the summit and the southwest rift zone of Haleakala as hazard zone 3. The steep downslope areas of Kanoa, Kahikanu, and Haupuas, and the area north of Hana are rated at a hazard zone 4. Other areas of Haleakala are rated comparable to the lava flow hazards of Mauna Kea and Kohala, hazard zones 7 through 9. These high hazard estimates for Haleakala are based on the frequency of its eruptions. Haleakala has erupted 3 times in approximately the last 900 years. By way of comparison, both Mauna Loa and Kilauea have erupted more than a dozen times each in the last 90 years. Haleakala has an eruption rate comparable to the Haleakala. All of Holalalea is rated at a hazard zone 4. However, the frequency of eruptions of a volcano is only one criteria of which hazards are based.